Hey there!
Greetings, Captain.
Do you want to see some shocking commentary by the people that made the first 3 James Bond movies?
Absolutely.
Commentary that was so shocking that Albert R. Cubby Broccoli immediately recalled and banned the LaserDiscs as soon as they released them?
That's illegal. That's illegal. That's illegal.
Commentary that was so shocking that when I published a video on it, YouTube demonetized it?
It's totally barbaric.
Then this is the video series for you.
I am so honored.
Part 1's got all the crazy stuff. Go check out part 1.
Roger.
Link is in the description.
Okay, now what?
You're here because you want more.
The world is not enough.
Parts 2 and 3 are on the first and second half of Dr. No. Parts 3 and 4 are on the first and second half of From Russia with Love. And I mean it when I say this.
I mean it.
The banned LaserDisc commentary on From Russia with Love is by far the spiciest of all 3 of them.
That's a spicy meatball!
It will be looked upon as the most infamous James Bond commentary of all time. As infamous as the monster movie King Kong.
Get on with it!
Let's not waste any more time.
Blah, 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 blah.
From Russia with Love, let's go!
This first sequence, the famous gun sight logo designed by Maurice Binder, features stuntman Bob Simmons, not Sean Connery. Sean Connery later entered this sequence when it was redone for the CinemaScope Thunderball. This sequence was based on a movie called Last Year at Marienbad, which was inspirational to director Terence Young.
This was entirely stolen. I just seen a very pretentious picture called L'année dernière à Marienbad, where everybody was wandering down moonlight paths with sculptures and Christ knows what. This is all L'année dernière à Marienbad, all this crap. Sean wore a very funny makeup there. He had a very strange... That is Sean, actually, himself, with this weird... They put a kind of a plastic makeup on him, you know, to make it look like it was a... to explain the mask that they lift off him at the end.
This is the garden of Pinewood Studios.
And I made one of the stupidest things a director could do. I made one of the stupidest mistakes. When he pulls the mask off, you see James Bond, and James Bond is killed before the picture even begins. After they've killed him, they pull off this mask, and there's a guy who looks just like Sean Connery. And we didn't realize this till we showed it at a preview. So I then had to go back and make a picture of the guy who looks nothing like Sean Connery, you know, because otherwise you really are disturbing the audience. I mean, the whole gag, the whole trick had gone out. And it was just, as I say, stupidity on my part. I just had to shoot the close-up again. Fortunately, I didn't have to shoot the rest of the stuff. That's all I need to do. We were late with the picture. UA tried to rush the picture forward, and we didn't have time for Maurice Binder to do his normal things. This we shot naturally at the very end of the picture, you know.
The in-joke on this title sequence was that they projected Ted Moore's credit, the cinematographer, over the girls behind. And the producers were very pleased with this sequence.
This other chess player, the great chess master there, this chap, wonderful face, great eyes. Our casting director just proposed him, and he came and I saw him and I grabbed him straight away. Just the face was what I wanted. I've used him about 3 or 4 times. Most of that's a matte. We only built the tiny part of the height of the chessboard. All the rest is painted. As I told you once, when I originally said I'd make 3, I said, or when they offered me the first picture, I said, as long as it's Thunderball, From Russia with Love, or Dr. No. As I told you by one of those weird quirks, those are the 3 I made, but in reverse order. I always thought From Russia with Love was the best of all the Ian Fleming books. I think it's the only one that really is more or less foolproof as a story. All the others, when you analyze them, they're really like the plots of those old Republic pictures, you know. And I think it had far and away the best cast of any Bond picture. It had Robert Shaw, his first big international picture. It had that wonderful John Ford troupe actor, Pedro Armendáriz, with Lotte Lenya. It really was a very, very good cast.
I needed an establishing shot. Now that's the reverse of the shot where she gets up at the end of the sequence. It's done in the labs, you just reverse the film. And the famous fighting fish, which they gave me to shoot, of course. The wretched fish wouldn't fight. And in fact, I made it up of a lot of very short cuts when they got together. There was feet of material that, in fact, they were just swimming around. Now that's the shot I reversed. This is a very interesting sequence because it was shot a couple of times for various reasons of dialogue. And in the end, those close-up shots of Lotte Lenya were done against a frame from some of the original material as back projection. But the way that they're put in and edited in, you'll never know. We just used a piece of the picture, and in fact, if she moved at all, you'd see her behind, on her own, which was a piece of a take that we had previously done, because we altered the dialogue later on. There she is in front of herself again. That background there is in fact the back projection. That's Pinewood Studios. And there's Black Park right next door to it. I did the titles for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang there, recreated it as Germany.
She was married to Kurt Weill, you know, the composer, who wrote, amongst other things, Mac the Knife.
Producer Harry Saltzman, who came up with the idea for the teaser sequence, actually wanted to film it on this set, with Bond being chased through the obstacle course by Grant. But that idea was killed because they wanted to save this production value for this later sequence.
Just a walkthrough. And that's the same shot again, done from a different angle. Though that's good production value too.
This is perfect. We had a crew in Istanbul for about 2 weeks trying to find all the best angles. And we spent weeks and found them all. And in the end, every setup we had was already on a postcard. So now I've learned the lesson that when I take a crew there, I first buy the postcards. We send them out to try and see if we can still get the same angle or improve on it, you know.
There is a lot to get across in this film, of course, and developing character. I mean, this lesbian character of Lotte Lenya in this film is very well done. It's just there, but it's not unpleasant and it's not obvious. It's not in bad taste. It's in extremely good taste.
Well, Lotte Lenya was a freak. She was the kind of impersonation of female villainy, just kind of concentrated evil. And at the same time, Terence Young kind of softened that a little bit when she was walking around in back of her and put her hand on her shoulder, and you know that the girl had evoked in her some lesbianism, perhaps, or something like that. You see, that would seem to me her only redeeming feature as a person. But she was marvelous.
Contrary to the uniform, Rosa Klebb is a member of Spectre, which in Ian Fleming's parlance stood for the Special Executor for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, and Extortion. Now, they're the principal villains in this movie, but that wasn't the case in Ian Fleming's original novel, which featured SMERSH, the Russian organization, as the principal villains. When they came time to make this movie, the producers decided to stay away from a political context, and they made Spectre the villain, an organization that was created by Jack Whittingham, Ian Fleming, and Kevin McClory in Thunderball.
And unfortunately, this is the only film, I think, where you actually see the Bentley, the green Bentley, which Fleming wrote about so much.
This again is one of the pieces of James Bond dear that Fleming wrote. Don't you remember the old Bentley? They chucked it away and they put an Aston Martin and a Lotus and everything in between. It's my shirt he's wearing, by the way, because I didn't like the shirt they had, so we switched shirts on the set. This was my gag, and he became awfully good at it. I told you I was practicing throwing the hat myself, waiting for Sean to come on the set, because he was late in makeup or something. He saw me, and he tried it about 20 times without it working. But the very first take we did, it worked. He said I was only fooling before. The boy who was the armourer in Dr. No decided that he'd rather do 5 days' work in Germany on a small picture than stay with this. And Desmond Llewellyn was in a film I made called They Were Not Divided. He and in Thunderball, there are 3 more survivors from that film who are all in. So was Peter Burton, he was in it. So was Christopher Lee. Moneypenny, she did her first film with me. This was the first of the gadgets, really, I suppose, because it's a Deus Ex Machina thing, literally. It's the thing that saves his life in the fight in the train, you know. Peter Hunt did a very funny gag when we showed this picture to United Artists. We cooked this up for them because they were all very solemn and serious, and Arthur Krim came over and they were so excited to see the show. So when Sean does this now, we had him do the thing, and we then cut to the explosion of the big fortress and Dr. No, and the end title came on. And they said, but what's happened to the rest of the picture? That's absolutely true.
And as a joke, we played all this exactly as it is now, with Q coming in and saying about the powder box and all the whole thing. And now M says to him, okay, you try it. And he does that, and he does that, and I blew up the whole film. And we put the end titles up, dum diddle dum 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 dum. Well, I thought Terence would fall out of his seat. Anyway, he loved it so much, it was a joke. He loved it so much, he said, don't change it, don't change it. And he kept wanting to show it to all sorts of people. Those are the sort of fun things that we did in the cutting rooms.
Well, Russia is more realistic than the others. It just almost could have been true. We hadn't gone so far yet into the fantastical, I might say. It was believable, almost believable. And also there too, a very, very beautiful love story. She's almost my favorite girl, although by far not the best actress. I think the best actress of them all was Diana Rigg in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
This girl now, coming out now, rather gorgeous girl. The inference being they've been screwing, you know. And that's Bob Simmons, by God. Yes, it is. He used to do the stunts and all that. Nice chap, he died last year. No question, he's more assured in every way, you know. He was a little too eager in Dr. No. Now he's cool. When you analyze it, he was the first really cool star in the business, you see. He was about his most comfortable in this picture, you know. He looked good. He hadn't put on weight, and he was... There are 1 or 2 scenes in Dr. No where he goes over the top. It's my fault. In this picture, you never had to tell Sean what went wrong. I'd say cut, and Sean would say, okay, I'll get it right this time. And he did.
The desk clerk's voice was dubbed by an actress named Nikki Vanderzil. If you listen carefully, it's the same actress who dubbed Ursula Andress's voice throughout the entire Dr. No film.
There again, that's a perfect postcard. There are about 6 million postcards of that shot. That's Santa Sofia. But we wanted somebody who looked vaguely Turkish, and Yugoslavia is pretty close to the border. So. This was such a lovely man, I adored him.
That's Nadja Reagan, who once again appears in the next film, Goldfinger. She plays the flamenco dancer Bonita in that film's teaser. It is believed that Pedro Armendáriz developed cancer while working on the 1956 film The Conqueror, which was shot near the Nevada A-bomb test sites. The disease would also claim Armendáriz's fellow actors John Wayne, Susan Hayward, Agnes Moorehead, and director Dick Powell.
This was, in fact, the sewers under Istanbul.
This was one of the first days when I knew that Armendáriz wasn't well. We had a lot of problem with him in his bloody boat because water was dripping from condensation. The rats were never in it, actually. We put the rats in as a bit of embellishment. But I knew there was something matter with him because he kept getting so irritable. He kept saying, this water's going in my suit. And I kept saying, well, shut up, Pedro. I mean, of course the water's going in your suit. It's going in my suit. It's going in my hair. It's going in my mouth. That's what happens when you're down in these places. He went upstairs in between to the next setup and all that. When he came down, he was just happy as a sandboy. What had happened is, like, let's not mention his name, a studio boss who's having a conversation with you, goes out because he isn't making any sense, takes a big sniff or two and comes back and there's a ball of fire. He was taking morphine when he went out because he was in pain. And it made him very irritable and bad-tempered. The moment he went up and gave himself a shot, he was fine. You know that Brezhnev saw this picture 3 times, because when I went and I met Brezhnev, and they explained who I was, and he said, and they said, yes, he said, First Secretary wants to tell you that he has seen the picture, but he hasn't seen it officially. I said, well, how did he get it? He said he got it from the British Embassy. That was Ian Fleming's thing. That was Ian Fleming's idea of the periscope.
In fact, this is not Tanya's legs and body at all. This is somebody with nicer legs, actually, and better physique. But it's interesting to think that they thought this was rather risque in those days. And when were we? 62, 63? We had a great sense of problem with the gypsy fight, the 2 girls fighting. It was considered to be rather immoral. In fact, at one point during I had to appease the British censors, certainly, and I think various other censors, because they thought it was far too sexy and immoral, the whole fight. I have a feeling Terence enjoyed doing this fighting, these 2 girls going at one another, apart from being an excuse to get a rather nice piece of unusual sex into a James Bond film.
I was out 2 nights ago with one of the wrestlers. I wish I could do it. Those kind of muscles, I think, take years of development.
But if you asked audiences, and I remember some interviewer do so as they came out of the cinema, what it was about, what was the story, they always fumbled. They never could tell you the straight line of the story. And if you really think about it, it's very hard to tell the straight line of the story. And furthermore, there's a great inconsistency in it. Why do they go by train? What's wrong with getting on a plane? But if you didn't go by train, you wouldn't have had the film.
Oh yes, this was Istanbul. We had the secret police with us. And we were having a lot of trouble with the people on this street, because it's meant to be 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody on the street. And they kept coming out. We had about 50 cops there, and they couldn't do anything. And 2 of the birds arrived from the secret police. I had an absolute identical situation with the mafia, doing the same thing when I was making Valachi papers in Brooklyn. And these 2 guys came in there, and they just went up to the first 4 people, and they went like this, were standing outside. They put them in a car and they took them to prison like that. Everybody thought they would never see them again. They came crying, saying, help us. We said, don't worry, they'll be back in the morning, don't worry. But everybody got in, nobody came out for about 2 days after that. They were still staying in their houses. We got them out in the morning, but they might have kept them in there for a few months, Now here's a very interesting thing. Everybody says, what happened to the bath? Why didn't it overflow? Now watch. The reason it didn't overflow is he never puts the plug in.
And another reason it doesn't overflow is because if you look really carefully, there's no water coming out of the faucet, just steam. So we needn't have worried about it in the first place.
A lot of censorship problems with this sequence, this next one. Well, she was naked, and they said, oh, you can't do that. And Shaw looked rather good there. Very handsome.
I suppose for 30 years ago, all this was very sexy. I don't remember that we had very much trouble with this, censor-wise. I think they just all got so excited by it, they got carried away. I hope. I got to know him very well, and he was a very reasonable man, really. He was really a very nice man, but I got to be quite friendly with him. And the producers used to say to me, go on, Peter, you take him out to lunch and show him the picture. And I used to enjoy showing him the picture and having lunch with him, putting a few martinis in him and making him mellow and nice.
Today you could show it in a Sunday school. I mean, Actually, really, when you analyse, it's only in about the last 5 years that it's really been, the floodgates have opened. The worst censorship was in America. England was not good, but America was ludicrous. When I made Moll Flanders, we made 84 cuts in that picture. And I didn't understand the film when I saw it. And the little guide here was a real guide, and he was screwing us blind. But when I went back there many years afterwards, he was still doing it. And he got me these carpets for about a quarter of what they really cost, but they were really worth about 1/4 less still. And my shirt maker, Mr. Lanvin. And that's how I wear my handkerchiefs, always like that. I don't like what I call actors' handkerchiefs, where they all flop out like John Barrymore used to.
Nowadays they do the most outrageous things just to get across whatever point it is they want to make. They don't care any longer. Once upon a time we used to try and make everything go smoothly so that the audience was not aware.
I know the man in the black beret, who is the Bulgarian killer. He goes into St. Sophia's, and Mr. What's-Name puts on his black gloves and kills him, or breaks his neck or strangles him. Now, we had a little scene before Sean arrives on the ferry boat to meet the girl who's going to give him the Lector machine. And the question is, how did he get away from all of them? In the end, we never bothered, but we cared a lot about it at that moment to make it more logical. How, when he's being followed, we've said in the picture, they follow us, we follow them, we're all very respectful about it. How did he get away? So they had that big Rolls Royce that he arrives in, and Sean is in the Rolls Royce. He's followed by the man in the black beret in the Citroën. Now, I got it wrong. Sean is in a taxi on his way to the ferry boat. He's followed by Mr. Black Beret in the Citroën, who is followed in turn by the big Rolls Royce, the British Embassy Rolls Royce. At a certain moment, Sean leans across, jams on the handbrake. The car stops. Mr. Citroën runs in the back of him, smashes his fender, smashes the front, and crashes into him. From behind comes the Rolls Royce, which starts to pull away. And out of the Rolls Royce steps Pedro Armendáriz with his cigar. And we did 11 takes because we want him to have his ash intact. So at last we got it, down, third one, and out steps Pedro Armendáriz, looking very urbane in a pale grey suit, looking very smart. And the man turns on him and said, "This is unethical. This is against all protocol. We never do this amongst ourselves." He said, "You've smashed up my car." He says, "I can't move." And Pedro had the cigar, and he said, "My friend," top, spills the ash. This is James Bond, the same thing. He says, "My friend," tap, the ash on the thing. He says, "That's life." And he gets back in the Rolls Royce. Sean gets in, and they drive off with this guy stranded. And they didn't have car phones in those days. We had that sequence in there, and that's the sequence I told you, my 10-year-old son. The picture's been shown to everybody. The critics have seen it. The United Artists people have seen it. The French distributors have seen it. They're dubbing it in French. Nobody realized, and I realize now we should have left it in. Nobody realizes that the guy's already dead.
And that's the first half of the interesting bits in From Russia with Love that did not make it into part 1 from the band LaserDisc Commentaries. Coming up in part 4 is the second half of From Russia with Love. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can see when I release that, as well as when I release the parts on Goldfinger. Let me know what your favorite bit was in the comments. Well, that's about all for now. Have a stellar day.